Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me as always, Brian Anthony Davis, and he's our podcast producer, and there is no third amigo tonight. I mean, when you think about it, Brian, it's been a while. Last week we had all three of us, right? Dave was back, but then I think the week before that you were out, or Dave was gone again, and then you were gone the week before that. I don't know. We've had more duo shows than we've had trio. I don't like it. We need to fix that. We need to fix that for sure.
And I think we will. In fact, I have something on top of my head. We could partially fix that tonight. We'll bring somebody in.
Yeah, let's do that, actually. We do have a special guest to start off the show before we get into the news and all that stuff. Brian is your podcast producer. Why don't you introduce our guest and bring him in?
All right. So we have been talking for the past couple of weeks, Jeff, about what's going to be happening in the new fall season. You know, back in the day, I remember getting the TV guide, getting all excited for the new shows that were going to be on ABC, NBC, CBS. There was no Fox when I was a kid. You know, there was nothing like that. So I would get all excited. So we're gonna emulate that. We're gonna do that. We are going to bring in 5 new shows at noon on the audio only platform, and we're going to be really excited to do it. And they are going to be unique shows. They are not just going to be different dudes talking about the Steelers. It's not going to be like that. It is going to be very specific shows that really might pique your interest. So one of the ways that we have found talent throughout the last couple of years is through not just our live chat, but now with Let's Ride on Wednesdays being the live show, we have had an opportunity for people to call in. And this is a gentleman that we found from the Ride or Die crew, the fabled Ride or Die crew. So I want to introduce.
It's like my coaching tree.
Yeah. My coaching tree's bigger because I've got the blokes. I've got the down under guy. So we have a show that is going to be very specific and something that Jeff loves, Dave Schofield loves, and we do it together is daily fantasy. But I'm also in a few fantasy leagues on my own. And the thing is, talking about the Steelers and fantasy football and everything else that encompasses it is what we're going to have on Wednesdays in the fall. It is going to be the Steelers Fantasy Football Fix. And that is going to be hosted by Jeremy Betts. So I'd like to bring in Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome to the BTSC family of podcasts, my friend.
Man, I am excited. Let's get this rolling.
Yeah, it's definitely like Brian said. I mean, we put out, hey, who would want to do this? And I think Jeremy, you hit me up on Twitter and said, like, you ever thought about a fantasy football show? And I was like, no, I haven't thought about that, but that's a great idea. Now I have to ask you this right off the bat. What's your favorite style of fantasy football? Brian brought up that we do FanDuel, which is daily fantasy, but there's a whole bunch of others. What's your favorite?
So my favorite has got to be just the standard redraft leagues. I just love competing against my friends and even against strangers that way. But I just like being able to redraft and be my own general manager, set up a roster throughout the whole year, trade for players, pick up guys off waivers, keep an eye on the full NFL spectrum that way, and it really gives me a better opportunity to watch more games and stay on top of every team in the NFL, not just the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I want to see how my fantasy stars are doing. I like to draft a redraft every year because I don't want to stick with maybe the same team that I came in last place with last year, right? So I want to be able to redraft the next year and put a better team out there to compete every week. So redraft leagues are my favorite. I do enjoy daily fantasy, though. It's a lot of fun to pick some of those diamond in the rough guys and not just be able to pick superstars for your whole lineup. So I like both, but I really prefer, just personally, the redraft leagues.
Let me ask you another question here, and I know Brian. I'll let Brian ask one in a second. I am someone that used to do fantasy football all the time, traditional leagues, but I can't do it. It just takes too much time. And you know what I hate about the most is no one would ever make trades. No one would make trades. They'd say, I like my team. Shut up. Anyways, my question for you, Jeremy, is I was this way. I want to know if you are. are you biased towards the Steelers when you're drafting? Because I could never draft at that time. You're talking about like the Ravens defense. I would never draft the Ravens defense. I can't have them on my fantasy team. Are you like me? Or are you someone that's like, I'm just going to get the best team? If that means Lamar Jackson, it means Lamar Jackson. Because I could never root for Lamar Jackson to do well in a game, ever.
Well, when I first started out, I was definitely a homer guy that was picking all the Steelers players that I could. But I got to the point where I was like, man, I just want to win this game. So if it takes maybe picking somebody I'm not a huge fan of as a Steelers fan, then maybe I need to do that. Now, I still had my biases. If a Steelers player was comparable to another player of mine, then I'm trying to trade for that guy all season long until it gets thrown back in my face or something. But I want my Steelers players, and this year especially, I see a lot of potential in some Steelers players. So targeting them at the early rounds of the draft is going to be not a problem for Steelers fans this year. It's going to be a good thing. So, but I'll tell you a story just to kind of tell you that I steered clear from the Steelers truther when it comes to fantasy. A few years ago, I was late picking a quarterback, and the quarterback that I wanted was Jameis Winston because I figured he was going to break out one year. He always was throwing a lot of balls, and he had some talent coming in, but he got picked up. So I grabbed Tom Brady from the Patriots, and I ran with him as my starting quarterback all year long. And it was in my one of my leagues where I have a couple of my brothers in it, and they were not fans of my selection, which, I had some negative thoughts about it myself, but I wanted to win. So I did my best to get a Tom Brady on my team.
There you go, Brian.
So, we mentioned picking the enemy, and you have to do that sometimes because it's best player available when you're out there and you're filling slots. So my policy is this: the Steelers aren't shutting out too many teams, and the opposition's going to score. So my thing is, if I'm playing the Steelers, and I don't care if I lose a fantasy football game and the Steelers win, the Steelers first priority. I don't care if I lose. But here's the thing. If somebody on the Ravens, and the Steelers are playing the Ravens, is on my team, let's say Gus Edwards, because I've had that happen. If somebody's got to score, it might as well be Gus Edwards and nobody else. Absolutely. So I'm not rooting them to score, but I'm going with that.
Sure. In those situations, I'm always like, I hope the Steelers have put 40 or 50 points on the board, and my guy that's on my roster for that team scores a late touchdown that doesn't really count in the grand scheme of things. That's my hope for in that situation. But I will start a player against the Steelers if I feel it could be a good start, or maybe I'm desperate, and some of my other players are injured and I have no other option. Got to go with the best option available.
Now, let me ask you this. How many fantasy football seasons have you won in your fantasy career?
Okay, so when at my other old job in Pensacola, Florida, I won 4 straight office fantasy leagues, and so I actually switched my team name to 4 for 4 after that. So it was a nice feeling to be the office boss, if you will, and running that league. But outside of that, I have won probably 4 or 5 championships in some other leagues just in the last 4 years. But I play in 5 or 6 leagues a year, so I get a little bit of a head start on those who maybe only play 1 or 2. But the one that dogs me, Brian, is the family league that I started for just my family members. I have not won that thing yet, and I am by far and away the biggest fantasy guru, Steelers guru, football guru of the group. And I can't win that league, and I don't know what's going on with that. So this year I'm going to have to change that. And I know some of my family might be watching this, so you guys are on notice that I'm coming for you this week.
Well, let me ask you this before we let you go, because you're a busy man. I know you are. And so here's the question. The Steelers have a pretty solid roster. Mm-hmm. I've been looking at some projections because once we brought you on board, I'm starting to kind of get a feel for what people are doing in terms of the fantasy football space, which is kind of foreign to me at this point. Give me a couple Steelers, or maybe are there any Steelers that would be considered round 1 picks? Like, hey, here's a guy that you want in the first round. Don't want to miss him. Okay. Is there anyone? And if there isn't, who would be the top picked or the top rated Steeler on the roster?
Okay. So even though he's a rookie and he's never played a down in the NFL, that player for me is Najee Harris. And I don't know if I'm taking him, like if I have a top 5 pick in my draft, then I'm not taking him in the first round. There's too many other, I guess, known commodities at the top. Christian McCaffrey's and Dalvin Cook's, Derrick Henry's, guys I know are going to, barring injury, put solid fantasy numbers up there for you. But if I'm picking in the latter end of the first round and I don't know if I'm going to get him in the early second, then I might take a flyer on Najee Harris. The volume is going to be there. It's going to be ridiculous, I think. If everything goes the way the team is talking it up, the coaches, the media, where this offense is going to run through Najee Harris, then I think he's going to be a 400 touch guy in his first year, and that is a lot of wear and tear, yes, but he's going to catch the ball a lot, which if you play PPR league, that's a huge deal. He's going to be a creator in the run game, so it might not matter if the offensive line is not very good, even at first maybe. And I have a little more faith in them than some people might. But I would say if you're picking the last 3 or 4 picks of that first round and you want a star running back who's going to get the volume that you need out of a top pick, you can't go wrong taking a Najee Harris in the first round. But he's the only guy I would say from the Pittsburgh Steelers that you want to target in the first round this year.
Here you go. Brian, anything else before we let Jeremy go and have a good evening?
No, I am just really excited to have Jeremy on the BTSC podcast family. And Jeremy, there is a rule though here. I am the podcast producer, so if you have any tips, you throw some my way for daily fantasy and not to Jeff and the Oracle Dave Schofield. So I'm just telling you that now. Keep the podcast producer happy with some tips. I got to beat these guys.
Well, you're the only phone number I have yet, so you have a direct line to the guru, if you want to call me that at this point.
He's the guru already. I love it.
No, just like I said, tell Mike Beck if he writes any more fantasy articles, he needs to talk to me first.
Oh, shots fired. Shots fired. All right, Jeremy, take it easy, man. Have a good evening. We're looking forward to your show for sure.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Take care, Jeremy.
All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, the Steelers preview. Thank Jeremy for coming on. I know he's going to do a great job. It's his first year doing a podcast. It's our first time having a fantasy football podcast. And even, during the live show and on YouTube, especially our live chat, there was a lot of talk about, who would you take in the first round, things like that. I think that if you're someone that is engaged in that 10-minute segment, you'll like this show. I honestly, honest to goodness, believe that. So think about that. When you see that podcast pop up, when's that start, Brian? Do we have a start date for that?
We're looking at, if I'm not mistaken, if it's the right day on the calendar, I'm thinking we're looking at July 28th, if that is the Wednesday, because it is going to be on Wednesdays at noon on the audio-only platform. And remember, if you're only checking us out on YouTube, because I know you love these faces. I get it. Jeff and I, we're sex symbols. We get it. But you can listen to these voices as well.
So, yeah, anywhere you get your podcast. Okay. Speaking of the 28th, the Pittsburgh Steelers could potentially be reporting to training camp as early as the 21st. Today, the Steelers announced that they announced not when they're reporting. This is driving me crazy. All I want to know is the senior editor of the website is, when are the Steelers actually going to be in camp? When are they reporting to camp? And they have yet to announce that. I'm not sure why. They did announce today, Thursday, the public dates. If fans want to go to Heinz Field to watch a training camp practice, it is completely free, but you do have to go to Ticketmaster. You have to register to get a virtual ticket. Probably this barcode goes to your phone, and then you can go. They have concessions, of all that stuff. My question for you, Brian, is, and you can see that article on the website, behindthesteelcurtain.com. Would you be interested in going to Heinz Field to watch training camp?
I would if I was available in there. Yeah, I mean, it would
So you
be
really
some
would?
fun.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Here's
feel
the
like
thing.
I'd be so far away. I mean, because they're assigning seats. I'd probably be up in peanut heaven. Couldn't see a darn thing. I could probably barely see big press booming punts. That's probably all I'd go for. But still, I mean, I don't know. That doesn't really interest me too much.
He's so big, you'll see him. You'll be fine. Now, the last time I went to training camp, Jeff, you were 4 years old. That's how long ago it was.
1987.
It was 1987, and people were so excited because they had two defensive backs picked in the first round. In the first two rounds, Rod Woodson and Dalton Hall. 87 was actually a really good draft when you think that Greg Lloyd came in it, and there were a lot of guys out of that draft. Actually, a nice year for a draft. But I really haven't been to that many. My dad has gone up in the last few years, and my dad's a photographer. He's taken a lot of pictures, and he has had pretty good access, but it was at St. Vincent, and it's more of a fan experience at St. Vincent. But if you crave Steelers and it's something you want to do, why not?
Yeah. Now I see like my boy Brad in the live chat said he'll be in attendance for camp. Brad, hit me up on Twitter or send me an email. If you're going to go, let me know when you go, because I want to talk with you about maybe getting some video or something like that of some practice work that they're doing on that day. So let me know. If anyone else is out there and they're listening or watching and they are going, they know they're going to training camp, let me know, because I would love to be able to see some, even if it's just, hey, they're doing the 2-minute drill. Hey, anything you can get me would be great. We'll use it for sure. All right, let's get to the crux of this show, and that is the Steelers to-do list before training camp. Before training camp actually starts, we're not sure when they go, but still, they should have like a checklist, a to-do list before they get to training camp. And Brian, I think we both have several items on our list that the Steelers should be doing before camp. What's on yours? I don't think there's any order of importance here. It's just a matter of getting the items checked off.
So this is probably number one for me. There's so many things, and we probably have a few things that are going to be the same. But I am going to channel the late, great Daryl Drake, and I'm going to say drown out the noise. Start dialing down that noise. The shenanigans on Twitter that we've seen in the last week and a half. Just start to get in mode. Just like, get your business in order, let everybody know at home that, all right, business, I'm going to work now. This is my business trip, even though they're not going to be being away from home, but they need to get out of that vacation mode. And, there's still, some of them are still in vacation mode. So it's, get ready for business. So I'm pretty excited for that.
It's funny you say that. The first thing on my list was that they need to be smart. And when I say be smart, it is especially young players. Some of them train so hard. And, you say they're in summer mode. Some players, they're never in summer mode. They're training their bodies in a rigorous fashion nonstop. And so I feel like they need to be smart to avoid injury. No one wants to see anyone report to camp with a nagging injury. I will never forget this. Never. I believe I'd only been running the site for a few years. There were still a lot of people that were upset with how he's doing things. They got over it nonetheless. Mike Mitchell reported to training camp and had a groin injury. And I said, this is something that could linger because I've played sports. I was a trainer for a long time. Groin injuries are, especially at a professional level or any, lateral movement could trigger that groin could be lingering. And they said, Jeff, you're crazy. It's early in camp. They're going to rest him. He'll be fine. He played that year on a torn groin and had to have surgery in the offseason. It lingered. It affected him the entire season. And so I didn't go back and say, I told you so, but it just reminded me that, hey, some of these training camp injuries can be season-long things based on the fact that the schedule is not conducive to them to actually heal properly. So be smart with their training methods. Don't do something stupid like on social media. Like you said, get your minds right. I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing is to come into camp fresh, focused, and ready to play. I think that's good. What else is on your list, Brian?
Well, this is in the personnel department, and I am still thinking that there are some free agents out there. And somebody's going to make a move pretty soon before their respective camps start. We know about the Justin Houstons and the Richard Shermans and the Brian Pools, and there are guys out there, the Melvin Ingrams. There are players out there that are going to be signed. Steven Nelson's going to be signed with a team. Somebody's going to start the run. So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about on the personnel end, don't get stuck at the end of a run if you want somebody.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Be proactive, because we were just talking about fantasy football, and it's one of my favorite things when the defense run starts or the tight end run starts when you're drafting in fantasy football, and then everyone's like, oh my gosh, I got to get a tight end because there's 5 good ones out there that you can count on all year, and then you're looking at, you're looking at Matt Kranchak from the 2005 Steelers. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to throw this guy in. I got to grab Zach Gentry because I don't have a tight end. You get to that point. So if they are serious about bringing in a free agent, and a lot of people want another outside linebacker to rush off the edge, they want another defensive back in Steeler Nation. That's what people were talking about. Be proactive and just don't get stuck and have to keep up with the Joneses.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go with something that's very simple. Someone said this in the live chat that I saw. They stole my thunder a little bit. Why in the world have the Steelers not signed Kendrick Green? He's their last draft pick to go under contract. He is yet to be signed. I am not joking with you. So when the Steelers, around rookie minicamp, they signed a bunch of their rookies. And then when OTAs started, they signed a bunch more. And then obviously minicamp, everyone's waiting. I've had this article pre-written now for months. I'm not joking, months. Dave Schofield went in and he actually had all the numbers because he knows exactly how much these rookie contracts are going to be, how much they're going to count against the cap. It's all been in there. All we literally need is the news to break, take the tweet, put it in there, hit publish. And there you go. Nothing. What in the world is going on? It doesn't make sense to me. He's a 3rd round draft pick when you've got rounds 1 and 2, those draft picks, obviously in Freiermuth and Harris already locked up. What the heck's taking so long? I don't know. So for me, that's the next thing is get Kendrick Green under contract because they're not going to want him participating in anything at camp if he's not signed. So they've got to get that deal done.
Yeah, I really have to question what's going on here. Who's holding this up?
It's the agent, but I don't know who the agent is.
Yeah, I don't know who the agent is. But as a player, I don't care if you're a rookie or not. It's just like, come on, get me in there. I'm calling every day. I'm like, get me in there. Like, no, buddy, we've got to hold out. No, you're talking slots. This is not 1987 when Rod Woodson didn't report until week 8. You're not in that situation anymore. You're talking about slots and you're a 3rd round pick. At this point, you've got to question the validity of your agent at this point when there's slots. I do not get this at all, Jeff.
And he showed up to every OTA, didn't miss one. Was that rookie minicamp? Was that mandatory minicamp? I guess technically he didn't have to go to those mandatory because he wasn't under contract, but I don't know. Anyways, what's next on your list? I don't want to spend too much time on that.
So next on my list is to make sure that this team is prepared with scheme, and I'm talking about on the coaching end. All the I's dotted, all the T's crossed, and make sure that how you script the games. I would like to see, and I would think that it's happening, but make sure that you've got a training camp script and you're comfortable with it, but you've got plan B and plan C for anything that happens. And I'm sure they are, but I just want to make sure that on the administrative end with the coaches, that they're ready to go and they're thinking outside the box.
That's a good one. That's a really good one with the coaching staff. There are some new faces there on both sides of the football. So especially on offense with Clem and Canada and people like that. I'm going to go with thinking a little bit outside the box here. Get a deal done. You brought up free agents in the run, and if you want a player, go out and get them. I'm thinking about what if they want to lock up one of their own. Now, everyone's going to think TJ Watt right off the bat. Everyone's going to say, you got to sign TJ Watt to a monster deal, and they will. But what if it's not him? What if it's not necessary now? I've always go back to what Dave Schofield always says, and that is, unless you can get a deal done that can get his his salary cap hit down than what it is right now, it's not worth doing it. Wait until after the season. So they might do that. But what if they were to say, you know what? Let's give Minkah Fitzpatrick an extension. Maybe they were thinking they can get him cheaper by signing him now rather than him playing this season and then having to deal with something else. Or here's another name. What about Joe Hayden? What if they feel that there's still value there? They like what he brings to the team, both as a leader and as someone that is still has a lot left in the tank. Maybe he could be someone that is a hybrid type defensive back that could play safety if you need. You could decrease his cap hit a lot, and that could then impact, Brian, what you brought up earlier in terms of signing other players. Maybe they get a deal done with one of those players, and maybe there's someone else that I'm leaving off the list that, hey, get an extension, get someone locked up. Never a bad thing, in my opinion.
I agree completely in that. Dave Schofield had the article last week, and he talked about it, about once training camp starts, and right at the beginning of training camp, it's very rare that you're going to wrap somebody up. Typically, what we've seen over the past I'd say like past 10 years, there have been a lot of deals done right before the start of the season, like right after cuts and right before that first game. We've seen it with guys like Cam. We've seen it with, my gosh, I remember, I believe it was 2014, and Marcus Gilbert and Cortez Allen, they got them done the morning of the opener against Cleveland. I know Cortez Allen ended up not working out. That's kind of that deal came, and then boom, he was done. But that's something that you really want to have them start looking at it, because you don't want too many guys. You mentioned Minkah. You mentioned Watt. I mean, those are some guys that you expect to retire with the Steelers. So
For sure.
you have to start having the conversations at least with these guys. And even if you don't wrap up TJ, but you're still having the conversation with them that, oh, this is going to happen. This is our plan, just so you know. So you don't have a guy get an antsy saying, hey, what am I doing? I'm a superstar here. Why are you stringing me along? And I know they've had those conversations with him. It's not collusion when it's your own player.
Right.
You could talk to your own player.
So do you have anything else on your list?
Yeah. So you mentioned Minkah, and I just mentioned Minkah, but I want to talk about the safety position. And I think that they should keep an eye on the safety position, and it's Minkah's counterpart, the video maven, Terrell Edmunds. And the reason I'm saying that is Terrell Edmunds is not guaranteed to come back next year. Now, it's not a death knell that they did not give him his 5th-year option. That doesn't mean that he's gone after the season. But I think that they need to pay special attention to that position to know that there might be a big gap at that safety position, whether you love this guy or not. He has been solid. He has just not lived up to the number one potential. He has played more like a 3rd-round draft pick, and we know how much we revere 3rd-round draft picks. We're talking about Kendrick Green, how important he is coming in. I know he was a 1st-rounder. I mean, he can't change where he was picked. He can't, that's not on him. That's on the Steelers. But there's a lot of value to him. So I'm interested to see how this is going. And even though we're talking about 2021, you need to be talking about 2022. But if you have some attention paid to that position, and the fact that you're doing that, that also motivates someone like Terrell Edmunds to be a wonder in this season and be able to bring him back.
Very good. Hey, do you have any other ones other than that? I have one more on my list.
That's my last one.
All right, perfect. So we'll do this and we'll take a break. So my last one is, I think that, and this kind of ties in with your coaching staff. I feel like the Steelers, they need to prepare their team for a different training camp. So I think back to even last season, those rookies, my gosh, I feel bad for those rookies from 2020 rookie class was just, is everything was virtual. The rookie minicamp, the OTAs, the mandatory minicamp, all virtual. I understand why. I'm not debating that. It's just that was fact. That's exactly what happened. So then training camp comes, and it's a weird training camp. They're not at St. Vincent College. They're getting tested every single day. They've got a distance and wearing these monitors. And not only that, there's no preseason games, and they're preparing for week 1, Monday Night Football, New York Giants, MetLife Stadium. Like, that's crazy. This is going to be more normal than what we were used to. It's not going to be the typical training camp at St. Vincent College at Chuck Noll Field and all that stuff. But, I mean, there's going to be a preseason now. And the Steelers are going to play more games than everyone other except the Cowboys because they play the Cowboys in the Hall of Fame game. It's going to be up to the coaching staff and the veterans on that team to really prepare them, even the 2020 draft class, and say, look, this is going to be different. Our camp's going to be different. We're going to be basing this around a schedule. So we're not going to have just straight practices. We're going to have days off, and we're going to have prep, and we're going to prepare, and we're going to plan and do some of those things. It's going to be different. It's going to be really different. And so it's going to be up to, like I said, the coaches and the veterans to make sure they get all that done, or else, it could be a hiccup for a lot of players. So we'll see. Anything to add, Brian, before we take a break?
Yeah, you sparked something in me when you said that.
Oh boy, I do that to a lot of people.
Yes, I know. Like Chicago had their top song in 1985. You're the inspiration, Jeff. And so you are the inspiration for what I'm thinking of right here. Not only plan for a different preseason, but also plan for a different approach when you're talking about your starters in the preseason. Don't be afraid to give Ben Roethlisberger reps. This is not the season to have him in only 2 quarters.
Well, but does Ben even play in the Hall of Fame game, in your opinion?
No.
Does he even play?
Not in the Hall of Fame game.
Okay.
But week 2, because we have been seeing Ben showing up in week 3.
That's not true. He would normally play a series or a drive in the week 2 game. And then
not a lot. I'd like to say this is where we need the Oracle.
Yeah, you're right.
And I might be wrong, but I remember the last few years, it seems to be Ben in week 3.
Yeah. Well, no, Ben in week 3 would play almost a quarter, but I would almost bet that typically he would play at least a series in week 2, and then week 4 he's off. Doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and challenge you on that.
Okay, check accepted.
So we can do the trading places bet.
What do we do now?
$1.
This is literally like the GIF where it's the Spider-Mans pointing at each other. Look at you. Is it you? Now, what do we do now? All right, we're going to take a quick break on the audio side. Head over to part 2 if you're watching live on Facebook or on YouTube. Don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the Steelers preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me tonight, Brian Anthony Davis. He's the podcast producer. We're not having Dave Schofield on. Dave Schofield's missed more than he's been on the last month, so I don't know what he's doing.
He's moonlighting at the Beehive.
Is he dancing?
He could be. He's got the black and gold G-string.
Oh my gosh. Okay, if I sparked inspiration, that's just horrible. I can't believe you just said that. If I sparked inspiration in you right before the break, you sparked some inspiration in me. We were talking about Roethlisberger. We challenged each other. That's as far as it got. Let's talk about preseason quarterback usage. Now, I think we can both agree that Mason Rudolph is going to see. Let's talk about the Hall of Fame game. How for a quarter? You play Mason for a quarter?
Yeah, you know what? I actually think Mason Rudolph is probably going to get some preferential treatment, and I feel like they know what they have in Mason Rudolph. He is going to get some time. But for me, I think that they're going to pay a lot of attention to Dwayne Haskins in this preseason. So if we're going to go ahead and rank the reps in actual games, I would probably say, I would probably at this point go Haskins the most, followed by Rudolph, then Dobbs, and then Ben.
Okay. So, but I want to go. It's a week one. Let's go back to the original question that you didn't answer. Does Mason Rudolph play a quarter?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so he plays a quarter. And you think who comes in next? If Ben's not playing, if Ben does not even, he's not even dressed. He's in street clothes. So Mason Rudolph plays a quarter. Who comes in the second quarter?
I'm actually going to say that the second quarter will be Dobbs.
Okay.
Because there's a pecking order. You know, they're going to look at tenure here too, and it's going to be a respect thing, and that's something that they do. But then Haskins will probably play close to a half in the second half.
So you're saying Dobbs gets second quarter, Haskins gets second half.
Yes.
Now here's where it gets interesting. Let's say week 2, whether Ben plays or not doesn't matter. We know Mason's going to be the first one in. Does Tomlin do what he did when it was Dobbs versus Rudolph for the backup, and that is switch them? So you said Dobbs was up after Rudolph in week 1. Would week 2, do you think Tomlin would go with Haskins and then Rudolph? Or I'm sorry, and then Dobbs. I'm confusing myself.
I absolutely think that.
Okay. I'm excited for this preseason. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And I have so much fun during the preseason because of this job that we have here. We know who everybody is on this roster because there are so many times in May. I remember, let's go back to 2019. You and I and Dave, we were all over Tuzar Skipper and Duck Hodges. Mm-hmm. We knew who Devlin Hodges was as the minute he was signed because we needed something to write about.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we were just looking for stuff. So we found... I still know that he went to Samford. I still know all the records and everything that Doug Hodges did back then. So it's fun we need to be familiar with who these guys are. And we're looking for certain guys in these preseason games now. So I don't get bored in the fourth quarter of a game because I'm familiar with it. And most people that don't know, they know the stars, doesn't mean that they're lesser fans. That's not what I'm saying. But most people that don't know the 89th and 90th man on the roster, and they have these unknowns coming in, it doesn't mean as much. But when you're researching these guys and you see them come in, you're like, all right, I want to see this guy.
Yeah. No, I think also the fact that there was no preseason last year. And I've said this a bunch. I want to see what Antoine Brooks Jr. can do. We saw him in bits and pieces. I want to see what James Pierre does. Everyone's talking about him, but he's played, 35 defensive snaps in the entire season? Is that enough? Is that really a sample size? Everyone's like, yep, pencil him in, or some people are saying, put it in Penn, right in Penn, starting cornerback. Like, come on now. Think about what you're saying. I want to see some of these players. I want to see how they do. And I'm going to be honest with you, little teaser for my Let's Ride on Friday. I did the potential surprises and disappointments for the upcoming season. And one of the disappointments was, no shock, Justin Lane. But we haven't seen Justin Lane, and Justin Lane has a perfect opportunity to step in and actually get some playing time. Who knows what Lustin's going to do? My buddy Lustin Jane. All right. Anyways, I have a question for you, Brian, and this is interesting. I put this on Twitter right before we went on the air, and let me check the poll. And you can follow me on Twitter. You see the handle there on the screen. If you're listening in audio, you can follow me at jhartman, HARTMAN_PIT. You can follow Brian Anthony Davis at BTSC Bad. So
not hashtag. I learned that.
You're just like those commercials. Are we hashtagging? Don't turn into your parents. You probably print out MapQuest directions.
every time that commercial's on, my kids and my wife is, that's you. You need Dr. Rick. I'm like, I know I need Dr. Rick. I'm the guy. I quit introducing myself to waitresses though. I don't do that anymore because of stuff like that. I'm trying not to be that cheesy guy.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. So anyways, I asked the question on Twitter, who do Steeler fans hate the most heading into 2021? Okay, so who do Steeler fans hate the most heading into 2021? And it was the rest of the division, Ravens, Browns, Bengals, or other. Now, like I said, this has literally been up for like 30 minutes. We've about 400 people voted so far. Who would you say, though, before I tell you what the tally is with the actual poll on Twitter, who would you say coming into the season? This is not historical here. This is not, I've always hated this team or this team, the history between. No, it's who do you hate the most going into this season? Brian, who do you have?
When it's Brown, flush it down. And
really?
I do have a policy now. My policy is I will not mention his name. He's number 6. And that's it. Number 6. Oh, no, I won't even. Now, the only time I'm going to mention his name when I bring back my song, Cleveland Sucks to Cleveland Rocks. And I might change it to Baker Sucks. But I just cannot stand that guy. The thing about the Ravens, and I'm seeing George and Stacy Lynn and Kenneth and David and a lot of people say the Ravens. And I'm laughing because the only one that puts Bengals on the screen is the bloke, Mark Davison. He hates the Bengals so much. I mean, I did a show, and it was a blast doing a show with him the other night.
Where does the Bengals hatred come from, though? I mean,
he just I've never really asked him. He just hates them. It's like he's never even called on the Bengals. It's always the Bungles.
The Escalooser. Get the Escalooser out. Warm it up.
He just, I mean, I don't know if it's something happened to him in his youth with somebody wearing orange and black tiger stripes.
It started at the Australian Zoo a long time ago.
Poor little Marky at the zoo. Mark, that's okay. They're in a cage. No, they're Bengals.
He said in the live chat it's from Vontez Burfict, which absolutely, I understand. I get it. We're just poking fun at you, Mark.
He's one of the most fun guys that we have on this network. I got to tell you, if you ever have long conversations with him, it is an absolute blast. He is probably, I want to hang out with this guy.
Yeah,
and I think Tony wants to move to Australia to be his wingman. He's already talked about that.
That has been discussed. I know that. Now, you said the Browns.
Yeah,
that was your answer. Okay, and go ahead.
And it comes from just the arrogance, and I still have PTSD from November 14th, 2019, and not just Myles Garrett swinging the helmet. It was the way the fans reacted to it, and it just seemed like a sanitarium and a penitentiary all wrapped up in one. The hatred that they had for Pittsburgh, and it's just something like little brother. He gets his new car, he gets a job, he's feeling fancy. He's going out there. He's like, all right, I'm going to take on the world, and I would just want to slap them back down. Because we live in Maryland, I get it, but I've got more respect for that team in black and purple than I do for brown and orange.
So, okay, you took the Browns, and I am not disagreeing you just because I don't want to agree and it makes for better radio or anything like that. Do we live in Maryland?
Yeah.
And do I need to bring up on my phone a picture of Wang Harbs to show you to kind of refresh your memory? Do I need to have you relive 2020 where he was, in my opinion, abusing the COVID protocols so that he could get some of his players like Marlon Humphrey back and to delaying the inevitable? He knew these players were testing positive. He delayed it. I mean, do we need to relive that, Brian? I mean, this guy, if it weren't for Wang Harbs, I would have some respect for that team. But because Wang Harbs is Wang Harbs, I have no respect for that team. None.
You know who
can't stand them. I know it's because I'm surrounded by these buffoon fans every single day wherever I go. And trust me, I don't like the Browns as much as anyone else. And yeah, it bothers me. But you know what? I still believe they're going to fall flat on their faces here. They can't handle the expectations. They can't handle people think they're actually going to be good. They're not going to thrive in that. They're going to collapse, fold like a cheap lawn chair. Still, it's the Ravens for me. By far, the Ravens.
So let me ask you this. If somehow we get an AFC championship game that's the Browns and the Bengals. Excuse me, the Browns and the Ravens. Are you rooting for the Browns?
Well, no. I can believe it or not, I've perfected the art of not rooting for anyone in a game. Like, I'm not rooting for either team. I'm sitting there hoping that both teams are lousy. I don't know. It is what it is. I'm not rooting for anyone.
But the question is,
that was like in Super Bowl that the Ravens and the 49ers played. Everyone's like, oh, I didn't want the 49ers to win because then they'd have 6 Super Bowls. I don't want the Ravens to win. I was like, I don't want anyone to win. This is awful.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, what makes you sicker? What would make you sicker? Because it would make
the freaking purple. It's the purple. I hate that purple. I know the Browns are going to choke anyways, so it's the purple. Then I actually think they're a threat to actually win a Super Bowl. Let alone, I don't believe in the Browns. I don't believe in the Browns. But for me, it's that I can't stand the color purple. I can't stand that stadium. I can't stand their coach. I can't stand their fans. And I know, and I'm not around Browns fans as much. If I lived in Northeast Ohio, I guarantee you my answer would be completely different. But for me, oh my gosh, get out of here. No, it's the Ravens for me. And honestly, though, the vast majority of fans believe they actually agree with you on Twitter, Brian, with 408 votes. 59% say it's the Browns, 35% say the Ravens, 4% say other, and 2% say the Bengals. So Mark Davison voted for the Bengals. I'm just joking. I don't even think he does Twitter, but still.
No, I asked him. I said, "Hey, I need to tag you on Twitter." He's like, "Yeah, it didn't work out, me and Twitter."
I guess, that's something, though, you brought up, and someone else, as I'm looking at my mentions here real quick, is people are saying, like, oh, I respect the Ravens. Like, what the hell does that even mean?
Okay,
you respect the Ravens. Okay. Come on. I feel like
Dad, calm down a second.
No, it's horrible. Like, I don't respect them. Okay, they don't respect us.
That's not what I'm talking about. I respect the organization a little bit more. And I'm not talking about Harbs.
Wang Harbs is the organization.
No, it's Eric DaCosta.
That's slime ball. It lives next to Wang Harbs. They go over and talk at their fence together. Oh my gosh.
Oh, they do? I did not know that. I mean, so it's like Tim Taylor and Wilson. It's like,
howdy ho, neighbor.
Harbs is like,
now Harbs is definitely Tim Allen.
yeah. Costa's like, we really got to move out of this neighborhood. Now, I think he's a very good executive. I really like how they build that team, and that's it. That's the respect I have for it. But I think as far as fans go, Browns fans are more disrespectful from what I'm seeing. Now, I'm not around them as much, but I could have a conversation with somebody wearing purple and have a lot better conversation than I would a delusional Browns fan. Now, a Ravens fan living in Maryland, I will say this too, they will jump off that bandwagon faster than you.
That's the thing. They're so wishy-washy. They're so fair weather.
Once they'll be gone.
Yeah.
When this run ends, they're gone. And I love the fact that, and I'm not praising their fans. All I'm saying is that I can have a conversation with them and keep them objective. I have no problem. I do love the fact that my kids see purple and they're giving them crap. They're definitely going to do that, and they're going to mock them at the supermarket. I love it because my kids talk trash. I think yours do too when they see purple.
They just point and laugh. It's the best thing you do.
So Cherry's saying I can't win this, but what
do you have a leg to stand on though? This is a viable argument, and I think the Browns. You can make a very good case for the Browns. I'm just not going to change my stance. You're not going to change yours. We're not here to convince the other. Yeah,
we don't want to. I just but at the end of the day, I would much. I think I could handle. Not going to love it. I could handle the Ravens winning more, and I have more disrespect for the Browns, and I can't handle watching 6 and 95. I can't even I had the insurance carrier that number 6 was doing business with. I canceled it. I canceled my policy. I don't want anything to do with that moron.
Did you really do that?
No, but it sounds good. I would. I am that petty. I am so petty. I'm Tom and Lori Petty all in one. when it comes to stuff like that. I would do that.
That's so good. That is so good. But hey, real quick, outside of the teams that were mentioned, outside of the division, which other team do you hate the most heading into this season? Is there another team that kind of irks you a little bit?
You know, that's really funny. I don't have a problem with Tennessee. I still don't even really have a huge problem with Kansas City.
Any team, AFC, NFC, doesn't matter.
I'm going to shock you when I say this. Buffalo.
I could get behind that. They're annoying. They're that team that's kind of annoying right now.
And Dave and I went to that game where we had a spoon, yep. and those fans were so obnoxious. Look, I'm an idiot. I don't drink, and I could be an idiot and have fun. And people could think I've been at weddings. People like say, "Hey, you can stay on our couch tonight. You've been drinking." And I'm like, "No, I've had Coca-Cola all night. I'm fine." And I can have a good time. But if you have somebody crazy enough to jump up on an RV and dive through a flaming table and then high five and punch out a woman while they're doing it, that's a Buffalo fan.
Yeah.
And they'll go shirtless and they don't care. They're insane. And that goes, I mean, the team's good, but it's getting to the point where I just can't stomach them either.
You know, like people will say like the Patriots, and those are teams I despise all the time.
Yeah, that's never going to end.
Coming into this season, and the Cowboys are another one. I've always hated the Cowboys. But coming into this season, it's Tampa Bay. I can't stand when everyone crowns teams. Oh, they have their whole roster returning, and Tom Brady's so great. And I'm watching the match because I'm a big golfer. I love watching golf. I'm a big Phil Mickelson fan, and I have to sit through all that crap. And Tom Brady, John, and all this stuff. But still, I can't stand those teams. It's not just it's Tampa Bay this year. It's been other teams in the past where they just constantly are just pumping them up. It's Tampa Bay for me. So,
I can get behind that too. I agree with you completely.
You have some trivia. I found some trivia to finish out the show. So why don't you go first?
All right. So, hey, the next time that you see the Steelers in a game, it's going to be against those Dallas Cowboys that you just met, the fake America's team. And I like to say that every single time. Nope, we were offered it first. We turned it down. You took our sloppy seconds, Dallas. So it's going to be the Hall of Fame game, and that is going to be the 7th Hall of Fame game that the Steelers played. Now, I could ask you what the Steelers' record is in those Hall of Fame games. That's not fair because all you're going to do is guess. It's 3-3. But the Steelers, since 1983, have had one repeat opponent. And they've played one team twice in the Hall of Fame game. Who do you think that team is?
I'm going to say the Dallas Cowboys.
Actually, it is not. They played
New Orleans Saints.
Yes.
Sorry, that was my second guess.
And I got to bring up, I am going to bring up somebody in the live chat that got that right. And his name is Chris Pugh. And we are going to be talking to him in the next few weeks because he is going to be joining our audio-only podcast platform as well. So we will be talking about him in his in the Steelers Power Half Hour. So we are going to be bringing him on the network as well. You'll get a chance to meet Chris. So good job with that. It has been the Saints, and they are 2-0 against the Saints in that Hall of Fame game. And the last time they played the Saints was Mike Tomlin's it was his coaching debut with the Steelers.
Yeah.
But it was also it was a very special night for me because it was on August 5th, 2007. And this was when Brian Anthony Davis was sitting in a hospital room with a baby draped in a terrible towel. My son Connor was born the day before.
Nice.
And here I am with my baby. I'm crying. I'm actually crying because I'm holding him, and we're trying to watch the game at the hospital. And then this guy comes in to give him shots, and he was wearing Reeboks with the Ravens logo on it. Oh. And I looked at him, and I'm like, look, You never trust a Ravens fan, son. He is gonna try to hurt you. And
I remember that game. I was actually, so my wife and I were married in 2007. And
so was that. So were we.
Yep. And we actually were, it was a whole family thing. My brother and his wife, my wife and I, we went down to Lakeview in Morgantown, West Virginia, played some golf. I had to call a bunch of people to make sure we could get the game because I wanted to watch it. I remember that game. I do remember that. All right, I have some trivia.
I love it.
So 2 trivia questions, both involve birthdays today, the 8th of July. One of which is the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. In 1933 is when the Pittsburgh Pirates actually were kind of created. Everyone knows the first pick ever, right? You know who that is, right?
William Shakespeare.
Yeah, Billy Shakespeare, exactly. Who was the first head coach? That's the trivia question. I didn't know this, had to look it up. But I figured I'd try Brian's hand and see if he knows who the first head coach of the Pittsburgh football organization is, because they were the Pirates.
Was it Jock Sutherland?
No, Forrest Dowds.
I did not know that.
There you go.
And I'm writing it down.
Now, the next birthday today is Mr. Lambert. Everyone knows Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
What is Mr. Lambert's real name? Because believe it or not, it's not Jack.
I want to say John, but I'm not.
Okay.
Is it John?
John Harold Lambert is his name. John Harold. Happy birthday to Mr. John Harold, a.k.a. Jack Lambert.
And?
And what?
And Snowman.
Oh, happy birthday, Snowman. Very good. You know, I still think Jack Lambert had one of the greatest Hall of Fame acceptance speeches of all time for anyone. He has that great line where he says, if I could do it all over again, I'd be a professional football player, and you better damn well believe I'd be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, my gosh, if you were there, could you imagine? You feel like you want to run through a wall, you know? It's great.
Yeah. And I told you when I met him, I know I've told you the story. And It was in our local mall, and he's sitting there it was a Dollar Tree that was vacant. And they had all this crap around. There was nowhere to sit. And he's sitting on this little box, and he actually had a beer and a cigarette in his hand. And he's holding court. And but you remember how you used to see him sitting on the helmet on the sideline? That's what he looked like. And the guy looked like he could still strap up. And this was 2010. But I saw a picture recently, and it was on Twitter, and he was not in the picture, but it was a picture of like Ham at the lockers. Green was there, but Lambert's locker was right there, and he had screwed into his locker the ashtray, this huge ashtray. And I showed my wife. I'm like, yeah, they don't do it like this anymore.
No. And I recommend anyone that likes books, that likes to read about the Steelers, to check out a book that's called Their Life's Work. It's really, really good. Gary Prominence wrote it. It's a long read, but it really dives deep into those 70s players and talks about Lambert and how after games, boy, they would just if they lost the game, they would let loose on each other. And I think they had a sauna in Three River Stadium. They talked about how when the Pirates were, the We Are Family teams, the Steelers were distracted. They were too worried about whether the Pirates were winning games, and they were distracted, not playing well on the football field because of it. It was a great, great book. Honestly, if you have a Steeler fan in your life, you want to buy them something, it's Their Life's Work. It is a great, great book. Great book. So I highly recommend
fantastic. It. Yeah, they lost that game to Cincinnati that week that the Pirates won the World Series. Yeah. I think they had 10 turnovers. I mean, it was like
distracted. They said people were checking the Pirates score during the game. They had trainers telling them like, "Hey, what's the score of the Pirate game?" Like, come on.
And you know what? You know how we do the retro show and we get to watch these old games. And during that stretch, Tony and I were watching a Browns game, and there's Swan on the sideline with that hat with Stargell stars on it. I mean, he's wearing that. He's wearing a Pirates warm-up jacket. Those guys did batting practice. They would, like, Chuck Tanner was really cool with them too. They would have Steelers do batting practice with them, and they would just have fun. They were Pittsburgh, and they were a team, and they were united. It was awesome.
Absolutely. That's great. Great way to finish. Do you have any final thoughts or anything, Brian, or are we good?
All I can say is it's coming. Today is the Steelers' birthday, and 88 years young, and there's going to be a lot more. There's one thing that you could count on. That's the coolest 88-year-old you're ever going to know.
Amen to that. Well, Dave's not here to send us off, so I guess we'll just say that's a wrap for this Steelers preview show. We'll be back next week for another episode. Make sure you check us out. We're inching closer to training camp, folks. I hope you're getting as excited as we are. For Brian, I'm Jeff. Take it easy. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Steelers preview.